Well, it's back to school season already, and our next
Yes.
conversation might surprise you in our back to college coverage.
Yeah, when you take your kid back to college, there's so many things you need to think of, or when they're starting. There are new concerns about college students and sports betting with the return of sports. So joining us now, our parenting expert, Dr. Cheryl Ziegler, and college football season is so fun. It's a great way to get to know new people, to bond, to have a blast. But then with that comes the sports betting. Is it a big deal?
It is a big deal. It's actually a huge deal. So the most recent numbers that I could find is that upwards of 67% of betting that occurs on college sports are by college students, mostly males.
Yeah.
And so where 18 to 22-year-olds are spending their money or their parents' money, they're spending somebody's money on these kinds of bets, but they're also much higher in the realm of, okay, you're doing this for fun, to gambling disorder, like in the addiction family. And so it's actually not something that's just all fun and games.
So what are some of the mental health risks that are associated with this type of behavior that you would say?
Yeah, well, really what the research says is that depression, anxiety, and even suicidal ideation. So of all of the addiction disorders, gambling addiction and gambling disorder has the highest level of suicidal thoughts. So you can imagine, right? You get yourself in a situation, and just like all the other gambling, now you're gambling upon something else, and now you're all in, and then you're borrowing money. It becomes a spiral. So I can understand that suicidal ideation piece of like, how am I going to get out of this? Maybe there's no alternative. So it's really actually quite concerning, not only just for the money part of it, but really if you've got addiction in your background, in your family, in your genetics of any type, right? It could be alcoholism, it could be drugs, it could be something else. There's still addiction disorders, and this is one of them. So I think if you know your kid, is sort of interested in those things, or even does those things, or you know it for yourself, you do need to be careful, because something that looks like it could be fun can really turn into a disorder.
So, and you talk about the genetics of addiction, that's very real. But if you think of being a parent of a college student, you're trying to let them fly, but you worry about too much drinking and becoming addicted to alcohol. And now you throw this in the mix. I mean, you don't want to be that helicopter parent, but how in the world do you kind of monitor it?
Yeah.
Tell them not?
I think we still need to be their guides, right?
Okay.
So if you'll know right now, we've got fantasy football. That's huge in this country.
Yes.
Right? So let's say you just start there. Hey, this is fun. When they start off when they're younger, a lot of kids start in middle school doing fantasy football.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And then they go up, and then maybe they start involving some money, even if it's $20, $50. Then you start talking to them about like, hey, there's a limit. There really has to be a limit to this. We're trying to do this for fun. This isn't a real way that you're going to make money, right? Because then they start thinking, if I get one great bet and it goes off, I just made $20 turn to $200.
Win in the lottery.
Yes. So those kinds of conversations, I think right now, if you're a parent, you should have a pretty good sense if your kid is even just on the fence. Maybe they're not there yet, but they love gambling, they love betting on things. If they're that kid, have these conversations, because this is really real.
And now we have less than a minute, but let's say someone's watching and they say, okay, I think this has become a problem. What would you suggest?
I would suggest getting them into treatment, into actual counseling. And so what we're seeing now is we're seeing the NCAA that's trying to prohibit gambling. We're seeing the NFL. They're creating programs in which they're trying to do studies to prevent this from happening. This is a big deal. This isn't a little tiny thing. So on university campuses now, you should be able to get your college student, if that's where they are, some help there. But regardless of where, I would get your kid help before it becomes a disastrous kind of situation, like it can for many people.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. The sports are recognizing it's a big deal. It's happening around the country and with all ages. So
yes.
Thank you, Dr. Cheryl Ziegler.
You're welcome.
Thank you.